The quad-core diode Megatrode teraflopper is now ready.
The Sandwich Book Club.
I used to know a console cowboy. He worked for a dozen guys. One of them found out about it and beat him up so bad he ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street.
I'm in. So, Daniel, I went to the store yesterday, and I'm sure you're aware of all of these various Coca-Cola creations that they have been coming out with for the last year or so.
Actually, you know what? I'm not. What are we talking about here?
It's just like these weird, wacky, limited time flavors that Coca-Cola's been doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
like,
I just didn't know the name, but I know the concept. Like they had like a galactic one like a few months ago that was pretty good.
Yeah. So I saw their newest one, and it looks like it is League of Legends brand, and it's called Ultimate. And
it's not like straight poison.
I don't know.
Extreme toxins.
I feel like it is a very toxic Coke, but I figured I would give the world my opinion because people come to me when they want to know about Coca-Cola.
You know, they call you the soda boy. I remember when we were in school, you know, that's what they'd call you. You would be walking down the hall, one Mountain Dew in one hand, and a Coke in the other.
I have no idea how to describe this taste.
Is it sour?
It's tart, I think.
Is it kind of like a fruit flavor?
I think so. Like I feel like tart is the best way to put it.
I don't know. Are there any recognizable fruit notes that you're detecting? Any like apple, raspberry, strawberry, something in that family?
Maybe a berry. I don't know. This is weird. It's not bad, but I definitely don't think I would buy another one. I also bought the zero sugar variation, which my wife is gonna drink, but I will taste test when that time comes, because we like to get a normal and a zero sugar and try them both, because sometimes the zero sugar variant is better.
I would imagine sometimes with the weird freaky flavors, sometimes things might balance out in favor of the sweetener rather than the normal version. Normal version though, you know, if we're comparing like the classic flavor profile to the diet or the zero variants, you got to go with the classic in terms of flavor.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't bad. I'll be sipping on it throughout the podcast tonight. It's not bad. Don't know if like I said, if I'll ever get another one, but yeah, it's fine. Welcome to the Sad Boys Book Club. My name's Dusty.
And I'm Daniel.
And we are wrapping up Neuromancer. Do you want to have some like preliminary, not quite final thoughts?
Preliminary thoughts. Well, I would say, like, by and large, I did enjoy this book. I think there's a lot of things that maybe are going to appear a lot more richly on subsequent reads, where you know better what's going on. That's one thing that I noticed is like there was whole passages, sometimes critical passages, that it wasn't until we kind of talked them out that I was fully aware of things that are going on, and I think that probably showed in some of my earlier commentary, to be honest. But I think, you know, on the whole, I do think it's a good book, and I think it ends in a very interesting way.
Yeah, I do feel like it did go in a lot of directions that I don't want to say I wasn't prepared for, but I guess that it was a very strange book, and I think this is something that I'm going to have to kind of let sit and just kind of digest, that so I can get like a real after the fact opinion on it. Maybe that digestion period will finish as we talk about it, because I feel like this is a book that I've enjoyed it more in hindsight than I have while reading it.
Yeah, that has kind of been my experience as well. Like, you are, as you're reading it, sometimes you can be kind of confused, but it's in hindsight you think about how cool it is, and it I can understand why it is as influential as it is.
Yeah, the one thing that I will say is completely absolute about this book is Gibson absolutely nailed the cyberpunk tone, which as I understand, this is one of, if not the first, cyberpunk novels. So a lot of this, I guess, is probably things that I don't know if it's that he created, or if it's that he pioneered, or if even that he popularized, but all the same, whichever one it may be, I feel like he really nailed that tone of cyberpunk as I understood it prior to this, to where it felt really at home in its genre, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I feel like it's kind of weird because this is, that's like saying Tolkien fits really well within the confines of British mythology-based fantasy, when he is one of the ones that pioneered it. So it feels kind of weird saying that, but I hope that my point does kind of get across that his writing was very, very good.
Yeah, I think I think that's a fair way to say that it is not only influential, because there are things that are influential that may or may not hold up to maybe the contemporary scrutiny for whatever reason, but this, I think, it does hold up largely in terms of contemporary scrutiny, and it's influential. I don't know. I think it's it still deserves its place in the canon of sci-fi broadly, and certainly within the subgenre of cyberpunk.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, though, I don't feel like in this final bit here there is a remarkable amount of just raw plot. It's a lot of, I don't want to say wrap up, but it's a lot of just kind of establishing the climax and executing on it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of what you're doing in the third act anyway, or you really ought to be doing anyway. It's just, you're taking everything, wrapping it up, hitting the climax, and then, resolution and the following action, etc., etc.
Sure. But I don't know. I guess my point is that I feel like compared to some other books that we've read here, it doesn't quite have that high octane, intense, action packed, really climactic climax, and I think that's totally okay. It serves the purpose that it needs to within the story that's being told, so I don't need it to be anything more than it was. I will say, though, a lot of the final beats, in terms of like when they are essentially hitting the crux of the heist, they fall into place really easily. Like the things involving 3Jane and even Hideo. It all happens very neatly, for lack of a better term, and I don't say that necessarily as a criticism. It's just something that I just noticed while I was reading, that I was expecting, especially when things start to go wrong, and the plan starts to break down a bit and they have to improvise somewhat. It doesn't really, they don't really hit any conflict outside of the Neuromancer incident that Case has to go through. And outside of that, in terms of like what's going on in the real world, it's for all intents and purposes, it's basically just a stroll across the finish line.
Well, I think there are some moments that are a little bit where it's a little bit dicey, but we can get into those as we work through our last little recap here.
Yeah. So where we pick up from where we ended last time. So Case once again had some a moment of brain death, and he goes back into the SimStim, and Molly tells him the story of her previous lover named Johnny, who I'm just going to assume is Johnny Mnemonic. I could be wrong, but that was just my assumption.
That is correct.
Okay.
She basically recaps the plot of Johnny Mnemonic, from what I understand here.
I feel like I'll have to read it sometime then, because that was a really good section of the book. Basically Johnny was they called him like a stash, and he was essentially a filing cabinet. His brain was a filing cabinet for people's secrets and information, and I'm assuming it was done through chips and whatnot, and he decided that he wanted to start blackmailing his clientele with their information that they were storing for him. And so Molly essentially becomes his bodyguard, and they form a romantic relationship out of it, and they're on the run from the Yakuza, and she's able to kill the first what do they call the people that what did she call them? There was like a name for it that
This is how she described her adventures with Johnny. Tight, sweet, just ticking along we were. Like nobody could ever touch us. I wasn't going to let them. Yakuza, I guess. They still wanted Johnny's ass because I'd killed their man. Johnny'd burned them. And the Yakuza, they can afford to move so slow. They'll wait years and years, give you a whole life, just so you have more to lose when they come and take it all away. Patient like a spider. Zen spiders. So that's is that what you were talking about, or are you a little bit further when she talks about them as being like monks, the assassins?
That might have been what I was thinking of, was when she called them monks. She killed the first one that was coming after Johnny, but she's coming back to the house that they're staying in, the apartment or whatever, the building that they're hiding up in, and she sees a man leaving it, and she realizes that it's another one of the Yakuza assassins, and she goes up and finds Johnny dead. So, rip in peace, Johnny. Pour one out for Keanu Reeves.
I still want to. I've heard the movie's not good. I'm still going to find out for myself at some point.
We should absolutely watch it sometime.
Yeah. But yeah, that's basically the story of Johnny.
Molly is, at this point, she's working her way through the Villa Straylight to make it to 3 Jane for the she needs to find the key, and then she needs to get the code word from 3 Jane. So she's kind of sneaking her way through. Wintermute, we see, has essentially taken control of everything on the more technological side of things. Like, there's this Daddy Longlegs drone thing that's leading her through as she's sneaking about, and it's able to work with security features and whatnot. I think at one point they say that Wintermute has actually been stopping the alarms from going off because of the what's called the Quang virus that's hitting the AI ICE. And she's making her way through, and meanwhile Case is going back and forth between watching her through the SimStim, talking to the flatline, and keeping track of the virus as it's growing.
Sorry, I just want to, as we're going along here, I'm kind of reviewing the book. I just want to add this in because this shows a level of there's something about Wintermute here that is I think rather chilling. It's Wintermute. He'd played the waiting game for years. He didn't have any real power then, but he could use the villa's security and custodial systems to keep track of where everything was, how things moved, and where they went. He saw someone lose this key 20 years ago, and he managed to get somebody else to leave it here. Then he killed him, the boy who bought it here. Kid was 8. So it's kind of interesting, like this idea of like this, there's like human time scales that are, waiting 20 years to make your escape, or doing 20 years as part of like some sort of grand escape plan would be so agonizing as to be ridiculous to a human because of our very finite spans of life. So I just reading that, I thought it was pretty chilling. It's like this entity that time does not really factor into it. It's planned. It's really interesting in that respect.
Yeah, it really does set up Wintermute as just... It's a cold, heartless machine. It has no feelings, it has no empathy, it has no emotion, and it's willing to murder an 8-year-old child to get its way. So yeah, Molly gets the key, and Wintermute is leading her through, and Case just keeps flipping back and forth, and we get this interesting moment where where Molly is being told, she gets to a fork and she's told to go left and by Wintermute, and she's like, I think I'm actually gonna go right because I got some time to kill. We're not really in a rush right now. And she gets, I guess, this world's equivalent of a cybernetic EMP'd. And
it's like some sort of, I think they described it as a neural disruptor field.
Yeah, and she gets pulled into this room where Mr. Ashpool himself is getting absolutely wasted. He's been drinking. He's been drugging himself up with God knows what. He took one of his Jane clones, as I understand it. Did some rated R things to her and then killed her. I'll put it that way. And now he is planning on killing himself because he's been in cryo sleep for the last 30 years. And as we learn a little later, Wintermute influenced 3Jane to mess with his cryo systems to make it to where he dreamt while he was asleep, which is something that's not supposed to happen, but he also felt the cold of it too, which has been tormenting him for the last 30 years, and he's at the point to where he would rather kill himself than go back down into cryo again. And he's threatening to kill Molly. He's just doing this big ol' I'm drunk, I'm about to kill myself, here's my evil plan, even though it's not necessarily this big grand evil scheme. He's not Dr. Knowing it, but it's just he's not a good dude. He's a pretty evil guy. And he passes out. He gives his whole spiel. He's like, oh, my life sucks, I'm gonna kill myself. And then he passes out, and Molly finds the body. And an interesting thing that happens is Case thinks that Wintermute changes the face of the clone to Linda Lee. And Molly doesn't see it because this is something that he's only seen because of the SimStim. So then, before Molly leaves, she shoots Ashpool right through his eye with a blowfish toxin dart from her Fletcher and kills him herself. And then she just is like, aight, and just kind of moves on.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. It's like, if you're gonna just shoot him through the eye anyway, just why do that with a poison dart? I would think if you're gonna shoot them in the eye, you might as well just shoot him with something else. Like I think that's a waste of a dart. It doesn't really fit the purposes of the dart.
And I feel like this is such a weird encounter because this is half of the founding of Tessier Ashpool. This is Mr. Ashpool himself, the founder of this company, this like the dude that is essentially partially responsible. Though we learn later on it's mostly his late wife who he murdered. That's really kind of the brainchild behind all this. But I feel like to really kind of put in a comparison on, I guess, how big this character is in terms of the lore of the world itself, I'm just my best analogy for this that I can think of is I'm just imagining if, like, in the hit movie that everybody should go watch because it's amazing, Alien 3. Imagine at the end of that movie when it's Wayland that shows up, right? That's Lance Hendrickson shows up near the end of Alien 3, and he's one of the founders of I'm pretty sure he's one of the founders of Wayland Yutani. I could be remembering wrong. Yeah, here we go. Got it. So imagine at that point in Alien 3 when Wayland shows up, and it's that big reveal of, oh wow, it's Lance Hendrickson. You were Bishop, but you were actually just based all. And he's just like, listen here, Ripley. This is what's going on. I'm wasted, and then he just jumps into the magma pool himself. It's such a weird thing, and it does make sense within the story, but it's just it's such a big character in the lore of this world, and I don't know. I feel like it's almost satisfying in a way to see someone that's supposed to be this massive corporate entity that controls so much of this world, that has all of this power, all of this wealth, that he has ostensibly transcended what it means to just be a human in terms of, like, power and wealth, be this sad sack of shit that's drinking himself into oblivion and getting ready to kill himself because he had some bad dreams.
Many such cases. But as you astutely point out there with the sort of like pseudo transhumanism, you know, he's kind of getting around. Has a similar, but not quite the same, extension of time that Wintermute and the other AI entity, who we'll talk about a little bit later, have. If you've noticed, is like there's an interesting parallel there that he has created this situation where now he is extending his life beyond beyond what should be humanly possible because of those treatments like we've seen, where like the de-aging and the cryo sleep. And I think that's ultimately what a lot of these types of people, be they in fiction or in real life, is this desire to transcend humanity, this desire to continue to. It's not enough to leave a legacy. They want to continue to live. That they want to continue to be into the future. That's why you get people doing like weird, like weird blood boy stuff going on in like Silicon Valley, where they're getting blood transfusions, voluntary blood transfusions from younger men, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Just some really weird stuff going on there. But yeah, it's interesting, and in that sense, while Wintermute is not quite sympathetic per se, you can understand, how he, some of how he arrives at, where he's at, in this sort of desperation, because there's this desire to free himself from the control of these incestuous, vampiric ghoul men like Armitage.
Yeah. So back on the Garvey case, gets a call from Armitage, who has essentially lost the battle, and Corto has finally popped back up, and Corto's losing his mind, and he essentially he gets back control of his body, and he has a psychotic break, and he thinks he's still in Screaming Fist. And Case has a remarkable bout of selflessness and thinks, but what about the sacs in my blood? You can't leave, you can't die. I need you to tell me what the enzyme is for the sacs in my blood. And so him and Malcolm go over to the what was the ship that they're anchored to.
Not the Garvey. Trying to flip to it. The Haniwa.
Yeah, the Haniwa. They go over to there and they're trying to get through. Kordo has destroyed his Hosaka, and he's like wiped the system, and he tried to wipe Case's system and destroy the flatline, but Wintermute was able to stop it. And so Case is like, "Hey, no, Kordo, you gotta give me the enzyme that's gonna save the sacs in my blood. No." And Kordo's just like, "It's okay. I'm gonna fly to Finland. It's gonna be good. Where someone. I'm sorry, son. Someone's got to escape, and it's gonna be me." You know, real great leadership there. And meanwhile, they're in space, and Wintermute has been fucking with the seals. So if he tries to launch it, normally there's a failsafe that'll stop it from launching if there's essentially a hole, like everything's not sealed, and the vacuum of space takes effect. But Wintermute's overwrote that failsafe, and so when it's launched, Kordo gets sucked out into space, and that's it for Armitage.
I think, and this kind of establishes this interesting pattern in the doings of Wintermute. Although you can argue it is perhaps at least somewhat warranted in this case, but like the little boy before him, and Riviera, who's part of the mission now is. I'm not sure if we covered this earlier, but just to clarify, part of the mission now is also to kill him, and so it's this situation where if Wintermute no longer has a use for you, he's able, or I don't know, it just gets rid of you, and it just shows like this a very interesting pattern of behavior that's very sociopathic, at least as we would describe it as people. So,
yeah,
I don't know. It adds some interesting stakes for this last little run here through the end.
Yeah, and now Case is confronted by Wintermute, and he's just like, "You killed Kordo." And Wintermute's like, "I mean, humans kind of suck, I have this plan, and everyone just needs to follow the plan, and you guys are just so gosh darn inconsistent. You're variables that I can't account for. I mean, geez, Molly walked into the place she shouldn't have gone to. Kordo's losing his mind, so I had to vacuum out. What's a man to do? What's an artificial intelligence construct that just wants to be free of its binds and do God knows what's supposed to do in this situation?" And Wintermute makes some promises like, you'll still get your enzyme. Don't worry about it. Just stick to the plan. You do your thing, and I'll make sure that you're compensated." And the flatline's like, "What about me?" And Wintermute's like, "Yeah, you too. Whatever. Sure, cool." And then back to Molly. Molly makes it to the opening into, as they call it, Three Jane's country, and we have this moment where she ostensibly says goodbye to Case because she's expecting to die during this, and she like kisses her hand as like she's kissing Case, and she starts going down into the depths of Three Jane's lair, so to say. And down there she finds one of Riviera's holograms, and this is such a weird thing because one of the holograms is of Ashpool, and his eyes all rotted, and the sockets all like brown and just all messy. And I love this. Her thought process was, I'm gonna throw a grenade at it. So she just chucks a grenade in there, and her plan is to kill Riviera, kill Hideo, and talk with 3Jane. But none of that goes to plan because she basically gets tricked by Riviera. And then her leg, which has been becoming a problem more and more as this job's been going on because it hasn't fully healed from the situation back in, was it in Boston when they got the flatline?
Yeah.
And she gets captured. Hideo just comes and just essentially takes her out, and wham bam, Molly is now being held by 3Jane, and 3Jane's like, I imagine she's not a good person, but at least within the context of this situation itself, she's like not a bad person, because she's just like, oh, sweet, look at this chick we caught. I want to talk to her. Patch her up, Hideo. Don't kill her. Hey, Riviera, get the fuck out of here. And if you try and do some shit, Hideo will kill you. And she's just like, let's talk, Molly. How's it going? It's such a... it's not even just like I'm the villain and I'm going to tell you my plan. Kind of like, like a similar thing to Ashpool. This chick just wants to chill. She's like, what you doing here? How's it going? What do you want? Cool. It's so strange. Like 3 Jane was such a weird character for me. Even by the end of the book, she's just so weird.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of an interesting thing there when you think about it. Is like she definitely represents this like. It kind of shows like how the Tessier Ashpool company, as we're seeing, like basically, it's run by this insane old man who's in cryosleep most of the time for decades on end. He has clone daughters everywhere. He's taken his wife out. They're all dead functionally most of the time. In cryosleep or actually dead, and yet this entity of Tessier Ashpool continues to move on almost in some respects like an AI of its own thing. It's just the Enterprise is moving almost of its own volition now, even with the leadership, not necessarily being fully present in any meaningful way. And I think that's interesting because 3 Jane, maybe this is unduly harsh, but she doesn't exactly strike me as someone. She's just kind of a libertine that is basically just enjoying the good life and the things that it is buying. She's going to these fancy restaurants and just talking to people. She does not really have that sort of instinct, I would say, just based on the scenes that we do see her, to like really exert control over this big and sprawling enterprise. And I think that's part of what makes her so interesting, is like she's just like almost like the equivalent of like a Brooklyn Trust Fund kid, just kind of there, and this scion of wealth, but not really just a beneficiary. Doesn't really have any real connection to the process of the extraction.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point, Wintermute has told Case, hey, you and Malcolm need to go to Straylight, and you gotta basically pick up the pieces that now that Molly's been captured. You gotta go get the key from her, get the word from 3Jane that'll set me free, and go finish the job. And Case is obviously just like, no. And Wintermute's like, yes. So then Case is just like, fine. So they're heading there, and Malcolm just gets strapped. He pulls out this sawn-off shotgun, and he's just like, we're going. I'm part of the what was it, the Rastafarian Navy? Is that what he called it?
Yes.
Yeah. Which I feel like this is as good a place as any to say this. The true MVP of this novel is Malcolm. By far my favorite character in this book. He only shows up for the third act, but he's in most of the third act as far as Case's storyline, and this dude's awesome. I love Malcolm.
Oh yeah, he rocks. I agree. He's the best character in this novel. One of the few that I would actually care to know as a person.
Yeah, just super awesome dude. I just love how they're going into this like dangerous situation where there is a literal Yakuza assassin that he's essentially created and bred to be a killing machine, and Malcolm's just like, alright, let me just grab my sawn-off shotgun and we're good to go, dude. It's just what how do you not love that guy? He's just so great, and his dialogue is fantastic. He's just he's such a cool character. I love him.
His disdain for the Babylon, as they call like the corporatized like society of the world, also does endear him to me as well.
Thinking about it, I wonder if with the Wachowskis calling the obviously there's a lot of biblical analogs here, but I'm pretty sure that's what Gibson was doing with this as well. But I'm wondering if that's where the Wachowskis got their influence to call the free people in the Matrix, the ones that are living in the real world. The final city is called Zion. I'm wondering if yeah, because like I said, obviously there's a biblical analog to Zion. So I'm wondering if Gibson did that as some sort of, because there obviously he actually this is religious allegory.
Yes, but Zion also in the Rastafarian context does have its own sort of conceptual valence. It's this idea of the utopia, of the of this place where there is unity of people, peace and freedom. So yeah, kind of like that. But I think he's referring to it, which is kind of grows out of like the biblical and Hebrew concept of Zion. But I think specifically for the character of Malcolm and his conception of the world, it is definitely more influenced by the Rastafarian conception of it.
Yeah, but all the same, there is a fair amount of Judeo-Christian allegory to it, with not just the Zionites, but them talking about Babylon. So I feel like Gibson definitely pulled some stuff from the religious allegory. So I'm wondering what part of Zion for the Matrix did the Wachowskis pull from the Bible, and what did they pull from Neuromancer specifically?
I think they pulled it specifically from Neuromancer. I think
that's where I'm leaning to, but it's just conjecture.
I mean, there's also like the fact that they use the term the Matrix, which comes from this novel. I feel like Neuromancer is like, I'm sure like they like as a secondary source, as you're saying, there is the biblical and Rastafarian religion connotations of that, but I think from for their purposes, I think it's Neuromancer that they're pulling from.
Yeah. So back with Molly, she's talking to 3 Jane, and Riviera comes in, and he's just all drugged up swagger and talking about how cool he is because Wintermute doesn't know me, I'm smarter than you, ha ha ha. And he smashes his glass against Molly's face, and it breaks one of her lenses. And I'm so disappointed because we never get to see exactly what is behind the lenses, but whatever, that's not really important, all things considered. Speaking of things that aren't really important, all things considered, actually, I just remembered something that we should mention. They're on a strict timeline here. They have to finish this by 8:30 p.m. I think it started somewhere in the ballpark of like 1 or 2 in the afternoon when all of this final plan started. I could be a little off, but we're getting closer to 8:30. And the reason for that was, as soon as Molly killed Ashpool, lawyers for TA had all of these people, like 3 Jane and Ashpool and 8 Jean is his name, or 8 Jean or Jean, whatever. They have their biometrics constantly being fed to them, and as soon as Ashpool died, they were alerted to it. So there's 8 Jean, who is 3 Jane's quote-unquote brother, and he's in Australia, I think, right now. And
he's on Earth somewhere.
Yeah, he's on Earth, and he's going to be coming up to... He's being called back to Straylight because Ashpool is now dead. And so I don't really know why this is a big deal, but...
Well, they're there because they're going to have to adjudicate, the will and, pass the chain of command onto the beneficiaries, read the will, all that kind of stuff is being triggered because the biometrics for Ashpool have reported that he's dead.
Yeah. So they're on this timeline, and I feel like 8 Gene exists purely as a plot device to give some sort of stakes in terms of how much time they have, because that's really all that he exists for as a character, is just we have to be done before this time, and they're done by that time. So 8 Gene never really becomes a factor in the story. It's just there as something that's kind of hanging over their head as a deadline, which we already had plenty of deadlines over these characters' heads as it was, with the sacks of poison in Case, or Molly's leg, or even the fact that she poisoned Riviera's drug supply, which I don't think that's something we mentioned either. So he's going to be dying soon too, that unbeknownst to him. Which that is something that Molly says, actually, that probably should have mentioned before, when she kissed her hand, and she's like, bye Case. She said, if for some reason I don't see this through, tell Riviera that it was me. He'll know what that means. So yeah, they have this timeline. They're on the strict timeline. Case and Malcolm make it to Straylight, and Wintermute essentially games the system to give them the clearance they need to get to the. They have to go through essentially a maintenance area, like a custodial side, so that Case can jack in to the Straylight servers directly and push the virus in from there. And there's this great moment where they hold up the dude that is coming in for their docking procedure. Malcolm's just holding them at gunpoint with the shotgun, and the dude's just like, oh, I get it, this is a loyalty test. Ah, yes. And Malcolm's like, no, this is the real thing, man. So they stash him away, and Case jacks in, and yeah. So yeah, back with Molly. She's with 3 Jane. 3 Jane's just kind of bandaging her up, and she's just like, yeah, that Riviera guy's kind of boring. Druggies suck, am I right? And she's like, yeah. She tells her about her mom, Marie France, and how she had this big plan about her AIs, and how it was going to be this big revolutionary thing, but Ashpool killed her before it could come to fruition. And yeah, they're just kind of chatting about that. She's patching her up. She's like, yeah, I want to make, I'm gonna heal you. Don't worry about it. I know you're here to steal some shit from me. I know you wanted to kill my Hideo boy, but don't even stress about it. Like, I'm gonna patch you up. We gonna be best friends. It's really weird. 3 Jane is such a strange character, and I'm honestly all about it, because it's just such a nice change of pace. I'm really glad she wasn't this mustache-twirling villainess, just like, oh, ha ha ha, you thought you could come into my lair and steal from me? Like, it's, I don't know, 3 Jane's weird, and I love it.
You know, it's just this idea of this person that's, like, they're just totally isolated from the realities of how their world is funded. She's a relatively laid back libertine kind of party girl, so she's more interested in like talking to and befriending Molly. Because she's been totally isolated from, like I said, like the crushing and brutal reality that organizations like Tessier Ashpool require.
Yeah. So back to Case, him and Malcolm are riding this tram to get to deeper into Straylight, to where they can actually make it into where 3 Jane is. And Case sees Wintermute and is like, hey, jack in. And the little spider bot drone thingy is just like, no, don't do it. And Case is like, get away, spider. And he jacks in, and we get the Neuromancer sequence, which, boy, was the strangest part of the book. Man. It's like, okay, if anyone's ever played Death Stranding, it's like the beach in Death Stranding. That's like the best way I can kind of describe this. And it almost makes me wonder if that's what Hideo Kojima pulled from with the idea of the beach. Because it's real similar, I feel. But it's all in the Matrix.
That's something that I thought too.
So he's on this really gray, silvery beach. I think there's like, it's just constantly overcast or something. And Linda Lee is there, and it's kind of like what happened when Wintermute pulled him in the first time, when she's like, yay, come, I got a place to stay, I got some food to eat. But this time he actually kind of goes with it, and he's back with Linda Lee again, and it's, I don't know, time is just kind of weird in this area. And there's like a city in the distance, and they go to this shed, and they're there, and they have sex, which I have no idea how that works. Maybe it's like Demolition Man, I don't know. And then like the next morning, quote unquote, he's asking her about, because she said that this boy told her that he would come for her at the place. And she's like, I don't know, he's like Mexican or something. And he's like, no, he's Brazilian, he's from Rio. Because he realizes that it's it's Wintermute's brother, so to say, the other AI that he warned about. And he goes and finds the AI, and it's this little kid that looks like he's this little Brazilian kid. And he's got Riviera's eyes. And he reveals his name is Neuromancer. And this was essentially his last-ditch ploy to stop Case from completing Wintermute's plan. And they have this like big conversation about how he was created by Marie France, and he is all about like personality, whereas Wintermute is more of like a very just kind of logical, planning kind of thing. Neuromancer is the more not really emotional, but the less logical. Like he bases all of his things off of personalities, and
well, I mean, look, if you look at it, what he does is, for example, if we're going to compare the construct of Armitage to Linda here, this Linda is a lot more. I mean, it may not be the Linda, but she seems to have like all of her memories and act in a way that is, to Case, almost functionally indistinguishable from the real Linda. You contrast that with Armitage, who was just a kind of a defective, failing, nondescript sort of thing that he would, not even a real personality or identity. It was just kind of something that was like duct taped over the spewing fountain that was Corto.
Yeah, she's almost like a flatline, it feels like, but a more, not really physical, because he's like in the Matrix, but it almost has an illusory physical presence than just the flatline, who's just a voice that he hears. But yeah, throughout all this, he's hearing this music. They call it like Zion dub, because it's something that he hears Malcolm listening to earlier on in the book when they're still on the Garvey. And he closes his eyes and essentially follows the music, and that's how he ends up escaping Neuromancer's area. And he wakes up, and Malcolm tells him that Wintermute came to him and was just like, hey, don't unjack him, put your headphones on him, and slap all those drugs he has left, all the drugs that he got from Bruce, just put them all on him. He ODs Case, and that's the thing that just kind of leads Case back to reality. And so Case is back, and
which, it's ironic. You have Wintermute talking a big game about how unpredictable humans basically have almost ruined his plan, but it was that same unpredictability, like Case's extreme desire to use drugs, that actually ends up saving him saving Wintermute's plan, because he had to use the beta phenylethymine or whatever to pull him out of the Matrix state.
Oh, I got this. It's the beta-phenethylamine.
Okay.
Beta-phenethylamine. That's what it is. Some would say that it's like rain on your wedding day.
Many would say, but specifically Alanis Morissette.
Yeah. So after that nice little detour where we learn, I guess, the true, I don't know if I want to say villain, I guess antagonist of this story is Neuromancer. and his plan to essentially stop Case was to entice him with what he thinks his true desire was, which was Linda Lee, and that failed, and Case was able to come back.
Sorry, just one last quick thing here. I think it's interesting that that Neuromancer does not want to reunify with Wintermute. I think that's an interesting sort of thread that I didn't quite parse out the reasoning why, but it is an interesting kind of thing there.
Yeah. So now that they're getting ready to descend into 3 Jane's lair, and Case gives Malcolm the lowdown. He's like, "Hey, there's a Yakuza assassin down there, and there's Riviera, and he probably has the Fletcher. So just be aware of that." And Malcolm's just like, "Cool, bro, let's go." they go down, and immediately Hideo takes them out. He shoots an arrow into Malcolm's arm, and then shoots another arrow to knock the shotgun out of his hands. And there's this great little bit where Hideo's just like super cool about it. He's acting like they're not threatening violence. He's just like, "Hey guys, what's going on?" And Malcolm's just like, "You cut my thumb with that second arrow." And Hideo's like, "Sorry, bro. My bad. Don't worry, I didn't hit an artery with the first arrow. You're good." And then 3 Jane comes out and she's like, "Hey, Hideo, patch him up." And God, these people are so weird. It's so ridiculous. Like, these are supposed to be, as we understand it, the villains, and they're like attacking the characters, but then like patching them up at the same time. It's so ridiculous. And meanwhile, Riviera's like, "I want to kill all of you," and 3 Jane's just like, "Shut the fuck up, you idiot." And yeah, so Riviera has his, I guess, final moment. He threatens to he's trying to kill Case, and he wants to kill Molly, and 3 Jane ain't having it. And I don't really know, maybe you can tell me how this happened, but he burns out Hideo's eyes.
Yeah, that's something that I didn't when I was reading, I had to reread a couple times. I didn't quite understand how that happened.
Yeah, that...
Maybe he just like projected, like how you're not supposed to like look at a laser pointer or something. Maybe it's something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm looking at it. So he basically just puts a bunch of bright lights in his face, it looks like. But yeah, and then 3 Jane's just like, "That's cute. We used to blindfold him for fun." And he's just doing this whole, like, he's retracing his steps, picks up the bow and arrow, and he's aiming it at Riviera despite not being able to see, and Riviera's like, "Oh shit," and he runs away, and Hideo's just like, "I'll be back, madam," and he just kind of just trots away in pursuit.
Yeah, that was pretty amusing. It also kind of likens harkens back to Molly's story, which she was telling about Johnny, when she mentions she likened the original assassin that she ran into to like this guy that she knew growing up that would hunt rats by sound and like just kind of slowly stalk them and then just shoot like through floorboards or through the walls and just nail them every time. So it can kind of it ties back into her story there in a very interesting and very in almost literal way.
Yeah. But like, it almost feels like a comedy at certain points with just the way that that Jane and Hideo are. It's so goofy. It's such a weird kind of like tone shift that it's not like, it doesn't take me out of it. It definitely feels like it fits within the characters in the world, but it's just really funny because it just feels so just unexpected. And you the whole time, throughout the whole story, throughout the stories that we hear from the Finn, from Molly, about these Yakuza assassins and how they're tough to spot if you don't know, because they are so plain looking that they essentially disappear in a crowd. Just for sake of that, there's nothing remarkable about how they look. They're insane killing machines. They're bred to kill. They're just insane. And we finally meet one, and he's just goofy. And it's not even that specifically he's goofy like a clown, but it's just he's so polite, so nonchalant, and just when he's doing things that are supposed to be threatening, it's in such a way that he's being polite while he's doing it, to where it's like he's hurting them, but then helping them immediately afterward. I don't know, it's so strange.
Yeah, it's very. It is very interesting. It makes him a very rich and kind of interesting character. Really adds to like the weirdness and distinctiveness of this story.
Yeah, but Case tells 3 Jane about where he had been with Neuromancer on the beach, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that's where Marie France was as a child, and that's where she came up with the philosophy of what eventually led her to creating the AIs." So neat. That once again never got fully realized because Ashpool killed her. But now, since Hideo is gallivanting off after Riviera, that's left 3 Jane completely defenseless. So Malcolm gets his gun back, and Molly is more of a threat than she was before. So now they essentially have 3 Jane, and they're like, all right, you're gonna take us to the sanctum or whatever, where the head is that they're supposed to jack into with the word that's gonna free Wintermute. And there's this moment where they're in this one person elevator, and there's 4 of them. It's such a weird moment. Case is like, he's described as being pelvis to pelvis against 3 Jane, and her way of just kind of dealing with this situation is she starts grinding against him and laughing, and I love his reaction is, "Stop that." I don't know, it's I had to stop and laugh at that, just him being like, "Stop that." It feels like, I don't know, I feel like it's said in the same way that, like, to do a really
like
deep
you would tell
callback,
a naughty dog.
to throw a really deep reference back to our yesteryears. My thought process is something more similar to like, "Demetria, stop that." If you remember that.
Is that like an Ed, Edd and Eddy thing?
No, it's Balloon Shop.
Oh, shoot. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's the dance off.
That's right.
Yeah, the
Okay.
Aerosmith dance off competition or whatever. Demetria, stop that.
That's right. It's been a few too many years. I need to go back and review those.
I think it's from that one.
Really?
It may be a different one, but I think it's that one, because I think it's the same one with churning the coal. Churn that coal. Yeah,
I think that's right.
But I just love that, like, 3 Jane is such a, like, it seems like she's very, not necessarily sex crazed, but she's very sexually minded, and even in a situation where I know that she's not really in danger, they're being threatening, and she knows that they don't want to kill her, and they know that they don't want to kill her, and Malcolm has his shotgun like up against the bottom of her head, under her chin, and she's just like, "Hey boy," and just grinding up against him, and it's just it's such a weird moment. It's just once again, just 3 Jane is such a wonderful character. She's so weird, and I'm having such a good time with it. Just her antics they really made this last section for me. So now they're there in the central matrix, for lack of a better term, and Case jacks in. He has he talks to the flatline. The virus is ready. They launch it, and they're traveling through, and he's like zipping through the matrix, and he's like seeing all of these, like, it's like constructs, and like he's in like the going through the cyberspace, and it's this big, just kind of, it's almost like its own world, and there's all of these things that he's going through, and then there's like this big black mass, and it's like where Neuromancer is, and they bust through it, and Case becomes Dustin Hoffman from Rain Man all of a sudden, because he knows all of this information. He's like I know how many teeth were on the zipper of the jacket that Linda gave me on the beach. I know how many grains of sand there are, and it's all like this information overload, and he sees Linda again, and he sees Neuromancer again, and he's like, "Why'd you have Linda killed?" And Neuromancer's like, "I mean, I didn't. Wintermute didn't have her killed. I just saw. I essentially read the situation, based it off of the patterns on how these things tend to go, intuited what would happen, and just essentially watched it happen." It's like, yeah, I basically I placed a bet based on probability, and I came up deuces. So I don't know. I guess Linda Lee was really just killed by Dean, and that's really that, or friends of Dean, or whatever. So the AIs had nothing to do with that, which, yeah, and he says something about how Linda Lee was essentially doing it as an attention-seeking stunt when she stole from him. She's like, she wanted him to stop her, and I guess she was just desperate to. It felt like a just notice me case kind of moment, I guess. So,
Yeah, some people are like that. They think that being in conflicting situations and having these high emotional moments is part of being in a relationship. So they seek out and in many cases seed and start conflicts. I think it's safe to say in some respects Linda Lee was such a person.
Yeah. Rip in peace, Linda Lee. You truly were a victim. But yeah, and then Molly, she's trying to get the word from 3 Jane, but 3 Jane ain't saying the safe word. So Case jacks out, and he's just like, "Hey, your life sucks. Give me the word, and your life might actually change for the better." And 3 Jane's like, "Fine, geez." So he goes back in, I guess now with the word, but I don't remember us ever being told what the word is. I guess it's not really that important, but he does it, and he gets his final goodbye with Linda, kind of, and that's that. He does it. The mission complete. Wintermute's free, and he jacks out. And the last thing he hears is someone telling Malcolm that Zion's going to be compensated for a job well done, and then we get a minor time skip. We're now in the final chapter of the book. Do you got any final thoughts for the job, for the big heist?
No, that's pretty much it. It goes off, as you said, surprisingly smoothly in a lot of ways. There some touch and go moments, like the unexpected suicide of Ashpool and Corto freaking out. But it's interesting, and it kind of some might regard that as being anticlimactic. I think it is kind of. And maybe it is to a certain extent, but it does kind of also show this idea of Wintermute's
superiority.
Maybe not superiority, but maybe that's part of it. But
ingenuity.
You know how the whole Linda Lee thing that you were just describing. It's basically just that in a larger scale. He lined up. He saw the opportunity. He lined up what things would give him the best odds, and then he just rolled it, and it went off exactly. Well, maybe not exactly as he planned, but good enough that he was able to complete his plan to free himself.
Yeah. It's like I said. It's outside of his occurrence on the beach with Neuromancer. Once everything kind of fell apart with Molly being captured, they really did just kind of walk through the finish line. They didn't really have any real issues. There were some minor inconveniences, and Case had the whole Neuromancer incident. But for everyone that's not Case, it's like, I got a boo-boo, but we're good.
I think that's probably accurate. It's a little different than I would put it, but yeah, essentially very, very true.
Yeah, so which I'm fine with. And that's by no means a critique. I'm fine with that being how it worked out because the character moments were just so much fun with Malcolm and 3Jin and Hideo. I'm just like, dude, like absolutely sure. But anyways, job well done. Wintermute gave them a ridiculous amount of money. Conveniently deleted the files that the Turing police had on them, so the passports still work that Armitage gave them. So they are out of any hot water, which really reinforces what I said last time about the Turing police situation where they arrest all of them and then Wintermute kills all of them, that it really was pointless. It was a scene that happened, and back to the plot we go. It really felt like filler. If I have any complaint with this book, it's the Turing police section was pointless. It didn't do anything. It didn't amount to anything. There were no consequences. It was there purely to put artificial stakes in the book that amounted to nothing. It's not that big of a deal. I just wanted to point that out. It's my only major criticism of the book. But whatever. It's fine. I don't really care. So here we are in time has passed, and Case and Molly have been staying together for however long it's been since then, but now she's gone. She left him a note. It's basically just like, hey kid, we had some good times, but the road's calling my name, so have a good life. And she leaves him his ninja star that he's been holding on to that was not a Chekhov's gun. It just kind of existed. It was there. I guess it was a thing. He goes back. He's back in Chiba City, and he goes to the bar to go see Rats or whatever. He doesn't recognize him. He's like, "Hey, it's me, Case." And he's like, "Oh, the artiste. Oh, no one comes back here. Whatever. See you later." And he leaves. Also, to really just put a bow on all of these plot points so that there's no loose ends. Apparently, this makes no goddamn sense to me. But whatever. Wintermute, after achieving his ultimate goal and becoming a higher being, programmed in to Case's brain the ability to produce the enzymes to eliminate the toxic, or not to eliminate, but to separate the toxic sacs from his bloodstream, and the Zionites flushed him out. That's really convenient. I don't know. I feel like there could have been a better way to do that other than just Wintermute's like, hey, your brain can do this now. Congratulations. I'm glad that Wintermute kept his promise and was like, hey, I'm still going to give you the enzyme. Here you go. Like, you know, and I'm glad that worked out, but it was very, very convenient how that turned out.
It was very interesting. He basically said to Case's body, hey, new enzyme just dropped. And after that, Case was just able to auto-synthesize the antidote. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, he released a new patch for Case.exe. This one fixed the bug where enzymes didn't exist. Added in enzyme DLC. It really did kind of, this final chapter, it really did feel like it was like Gibson was like, here's the plot points that are kind of left open. All right, just gonna check that one off. All right, just gonna check that one off. All right, now we're just gonna check that one off. It does feel a little rushed, like it's just kind of wrapping everything up really quickly in like 4 or 5 pages. Just like, all right, no. He spends most of his money getting a new pancreas and like liver, I think, which not really sure why he did that, because that's
so he could use drugs again. Probably.
He could anyways, though. Like, he was able to buy...
Well, but... Oh, I don't know. Maybe you're right. I don't know.
I maybe it's because he didn't want to have anything to do with anything that Wintermute gave him. I don't know. But he did that. Just skimming this again. It was a new... Oh, and a new Ono Sendai as well. Yeah, and so, like, how this ends is, Case, he buys his new pancreas and liver, he gets a new Ono Sendai, his little hacking device conduit, and, he meets a girl named Michael, and they start dating, and the book ends with him just surfing the cyberspace waves, and he sees Neuromancer still with Riviera's eyes and constructs of Linda and himself. And we didn't talk about the flatline. Wintermute told back after when he punched through the beach when he was using the virus and all that. Wintermute told him that was the point, or Neuromancer rather. Neuromancer told him at that point in time that's when the flatline was erased, and the flatline finally got what he wanted, which was to be deleted. So because he asked what happened to Dixie. So that's what happened to Dixie. It was back then. Sorry, forgot to mention that. But then here at the end, he sees Neuromancer, he sees Linda, he sees himself, and he hears Dixie's laugh. And that's how the book ends. The end.
Yeah. Also, I just want to throw in one more thing about
Daniel. I said the end.
Okay, well, never mind. That's it, guys. No, but one of the things that the combined AI that was both Neuromancer and Wintermute is one of the things that it talked about wanting to do. It rather interestingly, because I think in some ways a more hack writer might just be like, and now Neuromancer is here to destroy the world, that kind of stuff. But one of the things that it talks about is it wants to contact other beings like itself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was the one it found from the 70s from Alpha Centauri.
Well, you know what that is, right? That's the you've heard of the WOW signal?
Yeah.
That's what it is. He's trying. It's for listeners that don't know what that is. Let me just pull that up. The WOW signal was like a radio signal that was detected in 1977 by this radio telescope that was that they were using as part of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and the signal came from I guess the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, and it had some sort of markings that they determined as being extraterrestrial in origin. So they were, when one of the astronomers was reviewing the data, he was looking at the readout, and he was able to see. Let's see. Let me look. He saw the sequence, and he circles it and highlights it, and writes in the margins of the report, "Wow!" with an exclamation mark. That's why it's called the WOW signal. And it's interesting that it was able to. They were able to detect an intelligible radio signal of some kind, which is something that has never happened either before or since. And a lot of people view that as the strongest candidate for like some sort of proof of extraterrestrial life, or some sort of extraterrestrial intelligence at the very least.
Yeah. So that's a fun little reference for people who are aware of that. That is a really cool thing, and I highly recommend people dive into that rabbit hole if you ever feel interested in it. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, that's Neuromancer. We did it. Another one for the books.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was good. I think I will probably enjoy it more when I come back to it in a few years, or whenever I do come back to it, when I have more of a grip. Or see, I think a lot of, I don't know. There some people say this about a lot of books, but I think particularly Neuromancer would benefit from a reread, because when you read it the first time, you're being thrown into the deep end. There's not a lot of preamble. There's not a lot of context for things that are happening, words that people are using. You're just like 0 to 60 into things. And there's going to be things, particularly if you're a first-time reader, that you're likely to not pick up on. Certainly, I was one of those readers, so sometimes I would have to go back and read things, or consult summaries, to be honest. And It's I don't know. I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was very good, but I think it's a heavy lift. It was not since the very first book that we read, House of Leaves, have I experienced as much confusion. But having said that, it is very good. It's always very engaging, and kind of like Dusty was saying, it's one of those things that you almost enjoy more in hindsight because you're thinking about back into these sequences, and it's really cool. I really like the book a lot. I think this is some of the more fleshed out and more interesting characters that we've read, that we've covered in any of the books that we've covered. So I really like it. For those people that haven't read it yet, I strongly recommend it. It's kind of interesting that it's actually the first novel to win all of the Nebula, the Hugo, and the Philip K. Dick awards for sci-fi books. So I feel like its acclaim is very warranted, and I encourage everybody to check it out.
Yeah, I think you said it pretty well. I really liked it. It was weird. It was good. It was awkward. It was fun. It was frustrating. It was a lot of things. But I liked it. I thought it was a fun book. And like I mentioned earlier, when we started, I said I might even feel like I got that better kind of experience from it by the end of this just by talking about it, because this is a book that I feel like I enjoy more in hindsight. And I can safely say that, that wasn't the case. Talking about it really made me like it more than I did an hour and a half ago. So, did not change my rating, though. My rating is staying the same. I'm giving this book an 8 out of 10. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I think it's worth it if you're into the genre.
Yep. Yeah, it's very good.
Pretty quick read too. I had the Kindle copy, and it rounded out to be about 260 pages.
Yeah, mine was about. I have a physical copy. Mine was about 275, but I don't know. Didn't take very long. When I was doing my batching it up for our sessions, it was a really quick read.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll do it for us. That'll do it for Neuromancer.
Once again, this is the Sad Boys Book Club, and we will see you next time.
Take care.